is sponsored by To the Left Media, LLC, and to the extent applicable, their guests. The views and opinions expressed therein do not necessarily reflect those of NewsWeb Radio Company or its management.
You're listening to WCPT's To the Left with Samina and Shauna. Here's our host, Shauna East.
Hello, world, and welcome to the Left. I am Shauna East. Thank you for being with us in the studio here today. Samina is out this week, but we do have a special co-host for the beginning portion of the show, and that is Allie Marcella, who she's one of our production assistants here at To the Left, and she has also helped a lot with various political hijinks over the past couple years. If you want to introduce yourself, Allie.
Yeah, I'm Allie Marcella. I'm a DePaul student, and I've been doing a lot of work just around Chicago, helping Shauna with different hijinks. I've also been really involved in a campaign in Missouri since July, but I'm very happy to be here today.
Great. Yeah, thank you for jumping in. Just for folks listening at home, actually for folks listening on the radio, just in case you weren't aware, you can also watch us on Facebook Live on the To the Left Facebook page, and that is facebook.com/To the Left Radio. Like our Facebook page too while you're at it. Please share comments and questions for us right on the live stream. You can also send them to us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, etc. using the hashtag To the Left. That's TO the Left. And we're the @ To the Left Radio on all social media pages. What do you think?
Sounds great.
Yeah. So get in on the action. So what has been going on this week? Nothing. It's been a very quiet week. Nothing happened in the world, right?
Yeah, nothing at all.
One thing I wanted to talk about that I think applies to you, Allie, is last week we had a major event after the show last week. I was one of the organizers who got volunteers together and team leaders to pull off a very momentous rally here in Chicago. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? What it was and your role in it?
Yeah, of course. Well, a lot of my role in it had to do with you because you messaged me asking if I wanted to be a volunteer captain, and so I did that.
And it was the Bernie rally. We didn't talk about that. So
it was the Bernie rally last Sunday in Chicago, the second rally of his campaign so far. So it was very exciting. There's a lot of momentum there. I mean, I had to go a day early because I was a volunteer captain for Shauna, and it was just really interesting to see how it was put together and then to see everyone come in on Sunday, and there was a ton of energy. I mean, Bernie's last campaign was really what brought me into politics. I was a junior in high school at that time, and it felt much different, especially at the beginning.
I actually met you at a Our Revolution event.
You did.
So you must have caught Bernie's message before that at some point, or else you wouldn't have come, right?
Yeah. No, the first campaign was when I actually got into politics. That's kind of what brought me into progressive politics.
So for those who weren't aware, there was a very large rally at Navy Pier last Sunday for the presidential candidate Bernie Sanders. It was, like Allie said, it was the second of two rallies that kicked off the whole entire campaign. The first one being in Brooklyn, which is where Bernie was born and raised. And then the second being in Chicago, where Bernie went to college at University of Chicago. So the sort of theme of the whole kickoff was like him getting back to his roots, like how he got his start in politics, how he got involved in activism at the University of Chicago. He was a activist against the segregation of student housing there. So it was very interesting, and I'm curious for someone who's, now getting involved in the presidential campaign. I assume this is your first presidential campaign, right, as a voter?
Yes.
Okay.
I was 6 days too young to vote last time. I made a big deal out of it. But yeah, I'm very excited to get to vote finally. I mean, I've obviously voted in between that, but for the presidential, yeah, this is my first time.
So being someone who has maybe not volunteered at such a large event as that, like, what was that like for you?
I mean, it was pretty amazing. There were just so many people there, and they were all very excited for the next round of Bernie running for president. I mean, it really felt like a continuation of 2016, but a lot bigger than where we started last time.
So one thing, first of all, there was like, I've heard reports of about 12,500 attendees, which was amazing. And that means that we did a good job, getting the word out, because it was pretty much filled to capacity. And the line was just like miles long. It was crazy.
Yeah, we saw people really lining up around 1 p.m. Like when the volunteers got there were people just waiting to get into the rally.
So that was exciting. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in a second, but I just wanted to also let our listeners know that you can call in today. We're going to take some calls, so call us at 773-763-9278. That's 763-WCPT. I'm here with our production assistant, Allie Marcella. Samina is not here today, and Allie is sitting with me during the first part of the program. We are also going to speak in a little bit to our guests today, which are two female aldermanic challengers to the incumbents in historic runoff races in their various wards. We have Rosanna Rodriguez Sanchez from the 33rd Ward, who is going up against incumbent Deb Mell. And then we have Marianne Lalonde, who is of the 46th Ward, and she will be going up against James Kappelman. So this should be a pretty interesting discussion later. So back to the rally. I thought a couple things I noticed that felt different than the last time around were there was a lot more diversity to the folks there in the audience and the speakers. Obviously, it was probably a majority white, but back in 2015, when I went to Bernie's campaign kickoff in Vermont, it was literally 5,000 all white people, because it's Vermont. It's a very homogenous state, so that was much different. And then another thing that was really different was some of the younger folks that spoke. Like there was an activist from No Cop Academy that was amazing, and some other local activists. So I was really impressed by that. That felt different. That felt like, some younger folks were in the process of picking who was going to speak. So that was promising. But then it didn't go off without a hitch. One thing I wanted to amplify was there was a protester there. The protester's name is Mama D, and she is a activist from the South Side, I believe. Her group N-Cobra that she's a part of is from the South Side, at least. So Mama D was there chanting, "No reparations, no black vote." And it, it didn't disrupt the rally. It was, the rally was super loud, and she was just one amplified person in the audience. And I saw folks around her, because, she was yelling and stuff, getting upset. So I just went over to, support her, and I didn't want her to get kicked out or anything bad to happen. So I just went over and talked to her and gave her my card, and we ended up speaking a couple days later. And, I really want Bernie supporters to realize that this is a valid issue and that it's definitely something that's going to be up for discussion in 2020, and that we need to really be open to these difficult conversations to come and not just be defensive of Bernie immediately, that we need to speak to folks who have differing opinions and be really, validate people who are different than us, and just, I think the biggest part is just having the conversations, being open to them, and also realizing that, campaigns like this, Bernie, Elizabeth Warren, whoever your preferred candidate is, the primary is the part of the campaign that allows for the most democracy to happen. So if you see that your candidate is weak on a certain area or not as progressive as you would like them to be, this is the opportunity for you to really reach out to the campaign. I really am interested in, at some point soon, doing a conference call, a national call or a statewide call on the topic of reparations. Take those notes and be able to share those with various campaigns, just so they know what folks working on those issues are thinking and saying. And yeah, what do you think about that? Did you see Mama D?
I did see Mama D. Yeah. I mean, I think it's really important that we allow criticism of any candidate, even if it's our preferred candidate. I think that makes them stronger. Mm-hmm. And I think it's ultimately going to make whoever we put up against Donald Trump incredibly strong and in a good position to actually beat Donald Trump.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, I don't think we should be, I think we need to be cautious about being so defensive about our preferred candidates that we don't allow them room to grow. And there's definitely room for growth in any of the Democratic candidates so far. For sure.
Yeah, I totally agree. So do you want to take this call? Should we? Okay, sure. Let's try it. Let's see. Hi, Chris. This is Shauna. You're on To the Left. What was your question or comment? And please keep it brief.
Okay. Good afternoon. I would like to say I am a Joe Biden supporter. I hope he runs. I do like Bernie. I'm not a huge fan of Bernie, but I just hope Joe Biden runs so we can win back. I think Joe Biden will win the blue-collar states. So I just wanted to know you guys' thoughts on that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chris. Thanks for calling in. So I don't support Joe Biden. He's a moderate. I don't think he's progressive. That's my own personal opinion. He has been weak in areas, I think, of racial justice and of, his part in the Anita Hill and Clarence Thomas situation when I was young, really made an impact on me. So I still remember that to this day. I think I was 10 years old or something like that when that happened. Yeah, I think people like Joe Biden because he's an affable character, but I really don't see him as a leader on progressive issues. I'm not interested in him as president. Would he be better than Donald Trump? Sure. But so it's just a matter of, this is the primary. This is the time for the most democracy to happen. Let's look for the best candidate to lead this country sort of out of the madness of the Trump era. And I can't really say on the air who my preferred candidate is, but you can probably guess. But yeah, I'm very involved in one of the presidential candidates right now, and I feel like that is the person who can best push the whole country forward and move us forward to a more equitable, just society. But did you want to respond briefly to Chris's question about Joe Biden, what your thoughts are?
Yeah,
Allie?
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much agree with what you said. I just don't see Joe Biden as the strong progressive voice we need right now. I do think there are a couple other candidates right now who would be more open to pushing for a grassroots progressive future that we need. And I just right now, I don't see Joe Biden doing that.
Okay, fair. But if it came down to Joe Biden versus Trump, do you think he would be a better candidate than Trump? Or...
Oh, yeah, of course. That's a very low bar, though.
Well, it's good to know that, oh, we have maybe another caller, but we have just a few seconds left. This is To the Left. I'm Shauna East. Samina is out today. Right now we have in the studio Allie Marcella, one of our production assistants, who I thought would be interesting to have on to talk a little bit about her experience last week at the big Bernie rally in Chicago. And thank you for, jumping in the hot seat.
Of course.
On the show, just in a minute, we're going to take a break. We have female aldermanic candidates, Rossana Rodriguez Sanchez of the 33rd Ward and Marianne Lalonde of the 46th Ward. We're just going to take a 2-minute break, and we will be back with To the Left, and we'll see you in a second.
I'm Samina Mustafa.
I'm Shauna East.
We're producing a show on WCPT Sundays at 1 o'clock.
What should we call it?
How about Smash the Patriarchy?
I like it, but that's a lot of pressure. What about left-leaning ladies?
What about womansplaining?
Yeah, but what about when we have guys on? What about Madigan's Worst Nightmare?
It gets enough attention.
I got it. To the Left.
I like that. That could work.
Tune in To the Left with Samina and Shauna on WCPT 820, Sundays at 1.
Welcome back to the Left world. I'm Shauna East, and we are in the Stu studio today with two wonderful ladies, Rossana Rodriguez Sanchez and Marianne Lalonde. Welcome.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for coming all the way out to WCPT Studios on the far, far northwest side. Okay, what are we going to talk about first? So let's talk to Rossana for a minute. You have a history of working in education and advocacy, and if you could just introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your education background and why you're running.
Sure. Well, I'm from Puerto Rico. I was born and raised in Puerto Rico, and I started organizing very early. I was like 6 years old when I went to my first protest for water in my community. And after that, it feels like I always knew that the only way to get access to the resources that we needed was by organizing and articulating demands. My father was a community organizer. I became a teacher in Puerto Rico. I was a drama teacher. And at some point, there were very severe austerity measures that were implemented and budget cuts, and I had to leave. All my family and my affections, and I moved to Chicago, and I came to work with the Albany Park Theater Project. And there I became a mentor and an educator and a theater director. And we were telling the stories of immigrant working people in our community and in Chicago. And that way I became involved with a lot of different struggles: immigration, education, housing. We were interviewing people in the community and putting their stories on stage. And every time that we would go out in the community to interview people, I would be talking to the people who were fighting back, the people who were organizing. And that way I started developing roots in the community and in the movements. I've also been organizing in the left for a very long time. So this campaign came out of the campaign to elect Tim Meegan to become alderman of the 33rd Ward. I was part of that campaign. Tim Meegan was the teacher of a lot of my young people in the company. So we were 17 votes away from a runoff with Damel at the end of that campaign, and we decided to organize ourselves at 33rd Ward Working Families. And long story short, we've been organizing in the community for the last 4 years around education, immigration, and housing. And I was asked to run by that community and that group of organizers, and I decided to say yes.
And 33rd Ward Working Families started out of the Tim Meighan, so it wasn't there before the campaign.
Yes, after the end of the campaign, when we were 17 votes away from the runoff, we decided to organize ourselves so that we could do more grassroots work and eventually run again somebody. And I was the person asked to do that.
So I actually live in the 33rd, so I'm just, because you may be our future alderwoman, I'm just going to tell you a concern of a potential, your potential constituent. One thing is that I always worry about is I've lived in Chicago since 97. I moved to Logan Square in 97, which was a completely radically different neighborhood, and I miss it. But I've been having to move all along the blue line because I feel most at home on the northwest side, so I don't want to leave. But it's hard when you are a low to working class income and you keep having to move because the rent just keeps going up. Yeah. Is there anything that you're planning on doing to make sure that folks can stay in their community and that they're not displaced?
Sure, that also happened to me from the time that I got pregnant with my child to the time that he was 6 months old. I had to move twice because I was priced out of 2 different apartments, and I have seen a lot of the people that I love and that became my family when I moved here had to leave the ward. We have been organizing around housing for a while in the community. We put the rent control item in the ballot in March, and we were able to get 70% of the vote in the ward. We are very excited about the possibility of passing rent control. Right now, there is a bill in Springfield that was introduced by Will Guzzardi, and if the ban on rent control is lifted at the state level, then we're going to be able to create our rent control laws. And lately, I've been reading up a lot on rent control and how it's being implemented in other places successfully. Oregon just did that and implemented it at a state level. So I am excited about looking into rent control as one of those measures. I think that we also need to be supporting the formation of tenant unions. And there's many things that we can do. There's several ordinances too that we need to be looking at. So yeah.
And one of the organizations that has sort of led the charge on Lift the Ban is DSA. Mm-hmm. And you are also endorsed by DSA. Can you talk a little bit about, what the endorsement means to you? And
yeah. Well, after Bernie Sanders ran and so many people became excited about talking about socialism, about socialist policies, I feel like there has been a new energy in organizing in the city of Chicago with Chicago DSA. So I've been super excited to be a part of a left organization that is growing. DSA has played such a key role in our campaign. We have a lot of volunteers from DSA that are really excited about advancing progressive people and socialists to get into city council. And the idea of rent control, DSA has been, as you said, leading the charge on making rent control, putting it in the ballot in several different wards, and they've been really successful at doing that. So I'm super proud of being a part of DSA and working alongside them.
Great. I'm going to turn the attention to Marianne for a second. So you are running in the 46th, and I am not as familiar with your ward because I don't live in that ward, and I only have the capacity to know about so many races. But I understand that you're actually a chemist, is your background. Can you talk a little bit about your past, occupation and how you think that will play into the race and what you plan to do in the ward?
Yes. So coming into politics as a scientist, it is a non-traditional career move. I moved to Chicago to pursue my PhD in chemistry at Northwestern. And when I finished, I immediately went to work in the U.S. Senate. And I served as an energy and environmental policy advisor for Senator Sherrod Brown from Ohio for a year. And it was a really influential time in my life where I started to learn how a scientist can contribute to lawmaking. I got to work on Toxic Substances Control Act reform. It was the first chemical reform since the 1970s, and other legislation that was going on, even smaller issues throughout Ohio, such as trying to get certain sites designated as Superfund to ensure good water quality for those areas. When I came back to Chicago, I knew that I would be civically engaged always. It was just really impactful to see the difference that we could make in the lives of Ohioans in the Senate. So I started to get involved at a very local level. I became the president of my block club in the 46th Ward. I also joined a park advisory council, the North Lakeshore Drive Study Task Force, which is a group of resident stakeholders who are working to replan Lakeshore Drive from Oak Street Beach to the Hollywood terminus, the Associates Board of a Women's Homeless Shelter, Sarah's Circle in my ward, and on the Committee to Save Uplift High School, CPS school. So it's through these organizations and through my involvement in the ward that I started to understand that decisions in the 46th Ward were really being controlled by a small group of people that wasn't comprehensively representative of the full population. And that's when I felt that this was a great time for a change there.
So what are give me a couple of the top issues facing constituents in your ward and like what your solution for those problems would be?
Absolutely. I think one of the biggest issues in the 46 is not so different from the 33rd. We talk about affordable housing. We've had a lot of luxury developments come in the last 8 years. And we do see increasing rents in 46 as well that are starting to price lower income and minority residents out of a ward that's so traditionally multicultural and diverse. I think safety is an ongoing issue in 46. Right now we do a lot of reactive response to crime that happens there, but we don't do anything proactive. I think we can work more on engaging with youth and also tackling the root problems of crime, systemic inequality throughout the entire city and not just isolating it in that fiefdom of a ward like we've traditionally thought. And finally, I think economic development is a big deal. We have a lot of vacant commercial storefronts, and we want to make sure that we preserve the character of the 46th Ward moving forward as well. So trying to fill these commercial storefronts with women and minority-owned small businesses and making sure that we stay the historic and multicultural community that we've always been.
So both of you have talked about, gentrification, housing, and these being pressing issues in your wards. Let's start with Marianne, and I want to know what your thoughts are on aldermanic prerogative when it comes to zoning choices and things like that. What is your point of view on that if you become the next alderwoman?
Well, of course, zoning is it's a big issue in my race, not just because of what's happening in 46, but because James Kappelman is the acting chairman of the zoning committee on city council right now. So decisions that he makes and votes that he's called, even in the last few weeks on Cop Academy, on Lincoln Yards, have had the potential to impact everyone throughout the city of Chicago. I'm personally a fan of limiting aldermanic prerogative because it's been traditionally used to block the construction of affordable housing in certain parts of the city, especially on the north side. And I think that while you want enough prerogative to be able to respond to the needs of your constituents, using it to block affordable housing is really inappropriate, and we should limit the ability of aldermen to do that.
What do you think, Rosanna?
I think that we need a more holistic model of making those decisions. I am a big fan of participatory budgeting and zoning processes. So I'm looking forward to developing that in our ward, which is something that we don't have. I think one problem with aldermanic prerogative is that it facilitates corruption, right? And the antidote for corruption is democracy and transparency. And when you are being able to engage your community in making those decisions, I think that is the way to combat that, right?
So one thing that you guys both have in common is that you're running against machine candidates. Do you want to talk a little bit about the trials and tribulations, or what were you thinking? No, I'm kidding. We'll start with Rosanna. Like, what is it like to go up against, someone from the Mel dynasty?
Well, it's been a long time, right? The Mel family has been on that seat for over 40 years at this point. I think that it is disgraceful that we still live in a Chicago where you can actually pass your seat down to your offspring, like it's, some inheritance. So I think it was important to have somebody not only that is not just, wasn't given the seat, because that is such an incredible amount of privilege to just grab a seat, right, from a family member. But our ward is 52% Latinx, and we've never had anybody representing us, right? Anybody that is actually going to bring us to the table. And it shows, like, you see how limited the participation is in the community of the people of color, and how little power we have in making decisions. So I think it was important to challenge that. But I think it's also about the ability that we can have as a community to come together and organize. And that's something that under machine candidates is never going to happen, because it is about continuing to have control and power over the seat, right? Mm-hmm. So the idea is to open up that office so that people can make decisions over the issues that affect their lives. So that was important to me.
So Deb Mel was initially appointed to the seat, which was her father's seat. Mm-hmm. And then in 2015, she actually did win against Tim Megan.
Yes.
But the problem is that once someone becomes the incumbent, it's incredibly difficult to unseat them.
It's a lot,
and that's because of power, money, influence. I notice a lot of the businesses in the neighborhood feel pressure to put like a sign from the incumbent in the window because there's different things that if they don't support the alderman, could go wrong for their business or So
that's very real.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Let's go over to you and tell us about your experience running against James Kappelman.
I think the biggest challenge running against a machine candidate is finances. So James Kappelman in this election cycle has received $30,000 from Rahm Emanuel. He's received money also from Ed Burke in the last election cycle. And the machine is so wealthy, it can block candidates from being viable that come from a different background, that don't have the same financial resources moving forward. I think one of the easiest ways we can fight the machine is to advocate for campaign finance reform at the city level and work towards like a public match system or a different system where we're not being controlled by money in our elections. So James, in the primary cycle, sent upwards of 20 mailers, and I know none of the challengers in my race could match that.
So it's funny that you say this because, shameless plug, our episode next week is on election reform with Elizabeth Lindquist from Represent Us out in Rockford. So we wanted to include that piece in this whole, post-election or mid-election discussion because it's really, seriously important. So I just want to check in with you all personally for a second. Can you tell those listening just, how are you doing? Like, as a woman, it's really hard for women in politics. Like, are there things that you didn't anticipate were going to happen? Like, what are you doing for self-care? Let's start with Marianne. Like, how has it been just personally going through an election? Is this your first time?
This is.
Okay,
yeah.
So how has it been? What happened that you didn't expect?
And a funny question that people often ask me is, what was worse, getting a PhD or running for office in terms of self-care? And they really do rival each other. It's pretty tight. I think the important thing to do, it's remembering to drink water. My staff is really good about that, about hiding water in my bag and reminding me that salads are good foods also. Sleeping enough, I think. just making sure that you're meeting your basic requirements as you do this, because it's certainly, and I think Rosanna would agree, it's not a 40-hour-a-week job running for office. It's much more than that. It's very intense. But I'm so fortunate to have supporters that are taking care of me and reminding me to take care of myself throughout this journey. And also, I think some people talk about how running for office can be a very lonely experience, but in the city of Chicago, that's not been my experience, because there have been so many other amazing millennial women also running in this cycle that I've been able to build friendships with and commiserate with over the phone and over Facebook messaging. And building those relationships has really helped me to make sure that I'm staying grounded in this experience.
So it sounds like if you're thinking about running for office, make sure you have a support network. It seems like that's good advice. Yes. And what about you, Rosanna?
A lot of what Marianne said resonates. I do have a really incredible campaign and community that have been supporting me, and otherwise I don't know that I would have been able, or I don't think that I would have actually said yes if I didn't know that there would be people behind me that would be supporting me and helping me. In my case, I am also a mother, which is also a full-time job, and I have to be there for my child, and I want to be there for my child. So it is exhausting. I would say that it is one of the biggest sacrifices I have ever made, but it is also really gratifying to know that you're building something alongside other people that can help transform a city. In my case, one thing that my campaign allowed me to do and contributed to was creating a space for my child in the office. So I have a little corner where we do childcare, not only for my baby, but for other working families that come and bring their children. And we have childcare every Saturday, so I can have my baby in the office, and every time I come in and out, I can spend a little bit of time with him, and he becomes a part of it. So that has been an important part of this. And yes, the other part I would say is building the confidence to do it, because a lot of times many women don't think of themselves as, because of all of the sexism and the racism and all of the systematic problems and exclusions. Sometimes it is hard for some of us to project that confidence, to believe in ourselves that we can actually do this. And this has been a really incredible journey for me of developing that confidence and being able to believe that I am able to do this if I have the right support.
So we have a couple minutes before we're taking a break, and you talked about childcare on your campaign, and that brings to mind I've worked on campaigns before, and I really, at this tender almost age of 39, I just can't hack it. I mean, we're all we're working for progressive candidates that are talking about 40-hour work weeks, health care, like all these progressive platform items, but then, campaign culture is so toxic. Like, you work 60 to 80 hours, no time to go to the doctor, like no time to spend with your kid. Like, all these progressive things are kind of lost to the workers. And you named that you had childcare available in your campaign, which is amazing. Marianne, what are you doing on your campaign that is progressive to actually integrate progressive values into the campaign itself? Anything?
We definitely try to make sure that we're going home at a reasonable hour, and I do give Friday nights off to make sure that not only my staff is taking care of me, but I want to take care of them as well. Giving them time to make sure that they've done grocery shopping and also done those doctor visits. And I for a full-time employee was providing a healthcare subsidy. So I think that it's important to try to do as much as you can while acknowledging that the culture of running for office overall is just, it demands an evolution as well.
Right. Thank you, everyone, for listening to The Left. We are going to take a quick break. I'm Shauna East. We have our guests, Rosanna Rodriguez-Sanchez and Marianne Lalonde, in the studio. After we get back, we're going to take some calls. If anyone calls in, it's 773-763-9278, and we'll be right back.
I'm Samina Mustafa.
I'm Shauna East.
We're producing a show on WCPT Sundays at 1 o'clock.
What should we call it?
How about Smash the Patriarchy?
I like it, but that's a lot of pressure. What about left-leaning ladies?
What about woman-splaining?
Yeah, but what about when we have guys on? What about Madigan's worst nightmare?
He gets enough attention.
I got it. To the left.
I like that. That could work.
Tune in to the left with Samina and Shauna on WCPT 820, Sundays at 1.
Welcome back to the Left. I'm Shauna East. You're listening to WCPT 820, or you're watching us on Facebook Live, or maybe it's the future and you're listening to us on SoundCloud, iTunes, or the TuneIn app. Spooky. Okay. So we have here in the studio two aldermanic candidates. We have Rosanna Rodriguez Sanchez from the 33rd Ward and Marianne Lalonde from the 46th. We're having a great discussion about everything from gentrification to self-care. So we want to allow a little space if anyone wants to call in. We're here awaiting your call at 773-763-9278. That's 763-WCPT for those old school folks with a rotary phone. We have a few minutes just to talk about any upcoming events or anything where folks can, if they want to learn more about your campaign, where do they go? How can they meet you? Let's start with Marianne.
Sure. Since we have a group of strong women leaders here in the studio today, I want to talk about an event that we're having on Wednesday, March 13th. It's at 7 p.m. This is a fundraising event at Uncommon Ground in Lakeview. It's 3800 Clark Street. Having women supporters throughout this process has been really important to me throughout my life, really, because I've worked in these non-traditional fields for women in science, in politics, in business consulting. My campaign is more than 50% women staffed, and I wanted to honor the women that have helped propel me forward. Please come out to that event. And then if there are other ways to get involved, to sign up to volunteer or to donate, you can visit my website, which is marianneforuptown.com. So it's MarianneForUptown.com.
Great. And Rosanna?
Well, we are putting a lot of work now into going out and knocking on doors. If you want to volunteer with us, you can go to rosannafor33rd.org. That's ROSSANA for FOR. For33.org, and you can volunteer there. We are going to be having a meet and greet. We call it the People's Ward Night at Surge Billiards, which is in front of our office on Montrose Avenue, and that's going to be at 6:30 p.m. on Monday.
Great.
Tomorrow, right?
Yeah, it's Sunday.
It's Sunday today.
Okay, yes. We have quite a few people calling in right now, so I think we're going to take a couple calls, but folks, keep it brief and hopefully on topic. We have Virginia who wants to talk something about the 40th Ward. I just urge you, Virginia, no electioneering.
Okay, no worries. Hi, everyone. I was really inspired by the Ugo Akere campaign, and I wanted to know if either one of you have similar plans for cross-city coalition building and working with the efforts of local organizers and activists in other wards when you hopefully both get elected. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Virginia, for calling in. Let's start with Rosanna.
Definitely. I think that we're going to have to be building a broad coalition of progressives in the city in order to be able to achieve everything that we want to achieve. There's the things that we do locally in our wards to be able to serve our constituents, but then there's the vision for a better city, right? And for that, we're going to definitely work together with other aldermen.
And Marianne?
Yeah, I think it's important to build coalitions across different progressive communities. There are many progressive organizations in my ward that I'm already working with to build coalitions. One People's Campaign, Northside Action for Justice are just, and Asian American Midwest Progressives are just a few to name. And I think it's also important that we build them between the North Side and then the South and West Sides. I was so honored to be joined this weekend for canvassing by two former West Side candidates, DeAndre Rutus and Justina Winfrey, and have been building also friendships on the South Side. I joined Nicole Johnson to canvass in her ward very early on in the election, and I think building these coalitions and even just relationships between new members of City Council is going to help us to get things done.
And Nicole is running against Jeanette right in the 20th.
Yes.
So that's another race to watch out for. I have my eyes on it.
Yeah.
But we had Jeanette on the show, so yeah. It looks like we have even more people calling in, so let's try Sheila. It sounds like you have a question for Marianne. Your mic is live.
Yes, I do. So one of the things that Marianne wants to improve in the 46th Ward is the process of real estate development and decisions around that. I believe that's true. And what specifically does she plan to do to improve the process and to get ward residents' input?
Excellent.
Thank you, Sheila.
So right now, Sheila, as you may know, we do have a 46 Ward Zoning and Development Committee. It's a 40-member committee that James Kappelman created that includes representatives from area organizations, from block clubs. But I have some issues with this committee because it only has 3 people of color on it. I don't think that it's comprehensive representation of the whole ward. And 4 of the spots on the committee are appointed by Alderman Kappelman. So while I really appreciate the public comment process that we have in place on zoning decisions, I think we need to evolve it to make sure that it's representative of a true cross-section of our entire ward.
Okay, great. Let's try Zach. Zach thinks we are approaching modifying the city wrong. Do you have a question or comment? And keep it brief, please, Zach.
Okay, so a couple of things. One, I think we should never approach anything related to the city from the standpoint that we want to lower taxes. Because lowering taxes, people will pay a premium if they see good results. I mean, Chicago didn't become the great city it is by low taxes. New York didn't become what it is by low taxes. So you have all these big cities, we tax a lot, but people are willing to pay a premium to live here. That's first. And if we want to raise funds, I think there's many ways to go about doing that. For example, there's lots of people speeding in the city of Chicago. I mean, we could ticket more. We could relax legislation on all the litigation that occurs around here. I mean, if we want to save money from the city employee standpoint, we could probably give them lower cost health care as opposed to the Cadillac plans that they currently have. So, I mean, we have to get creative in the sense that if we want a prosperous city, we have to invest in the city. Nobody wants to live in a city where nobody invests money in.
Thank you for calling in, Zach. I have a comment to that. So taxes are not inherently wrong. I believe that we should be taxed to pay for services that help everyone. I think the problem is that when people see the corruption and the, poor administration of like how these taxes are used and administered, I think there, probably are things that can be done to make sure that we're actually seeing the results of those taxes. Like if we're paying high property taxes and all of these other taxes, we want to see that our infrastructure is not crumbling. We want to see that we have social services, mental health care services, health, basic human needs. Yes. So I agree with Zach that taxes are not necessarily bad. I do not agree with Zach that we need to have more regressive fines, fees, and ticketing because a lot of those cameras and a lot of those speed traps and all those affect black and brown residents the most. And we know that because studies have shown that. So no, I don't agree that we should be extracting wealth from certain typically poor communities in order to fund projects in more wealthy communities. And each of you can also respond, but we just have a few minutes, so let's start with Rosanna.
Well, I think that we need to be looking, you're right, we need taxes, but I think that right now there's only some people are paying taxes. We have a very regressive, for example, property tax structure. And I'm excited to see how that changes now under Fritz Kegi, for example, and the new people that have been elected to the Cook County Board. So we need to be looking at making taxes more progressive so that everybody pays their fair share, because right now that's not how it's happening.
And what do you have to say about Zach's comments, Marianne?
I agree with the progressive income tax at the state level. I think that's one of the biggest changes we can advocate for. And then there are a lot of other opportunities for new revenue, including the legalization and taxation of marijuana, a LaSalle Street tax, ways that don't necessarily adversely affect residents in our communities. I think when we talk about affordable housing, we often default to low-income rental housing, but it's important to also note that affordable housing means for homeowners who have paid off their homes and are struggling to pay their rapidly increasing property taxes. That's another way that we can look at affordable housing and making sure that people on fixed incomes and seniors are getting that property tax relief that they need.
So this brings up something interesting that happened this week. Pritzker released his plans for his version of the progressive tax, and I'm curious if you all got the chance to see that. I know you're so busy. Did either of you have any thoughts about that?
I have to be honest, and I have not looked at it yet. Thank you for mentioning it. I'm going to go read about it.
I'm going to join Rosanna.
Well, I'm going to tell everyone what I thought about it. So I do not think people who make under $30,000 a year should pay tax. I mean, how can anyone, they have a tax level for people under $10,000? How does anyone who makes $10,000 a year survive? I know people who are disabled and on Social Security and older folks having to make it on like $13,000, $14,000 a year just because they're on a fixed income. That's their only income. And you basically have to live with other people. You have to have other people helping you in some way. Like, it's just unreal. So that's my complaint, Governor Pritzker. Okay. And we'll have you both back to talk about it later.
Yes.
Sorry for the gotcha question. So I really, really appreciate y'all coming out. I'm going to close off the show today with some thank yous and some, our obligatory please come to our fundraiser closeout. But thank you so much for making it out. Our production assistant Anna will share the links to your websites and your Facebook pages in the live stream, and please feel free to share the live stream. We hope this helps amplify your message and get the word out, and everyone should come out and vote on what date?
April 2nd.
Great.
Or earlier.
Yeah, when does early voting start?
The 11th?
March 15th at the Super Site and March 18th in ward locations.
Oh my gosh, that's like this week.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. We're doing this, Chicago. Okay. So thank you. You all are listening to the Left. I'm Shauna East. Samina will be back next week with our guest, Elizabeth Lindquist. The topic will be election reform. Looking forward to that. Just so everyone knows, our airtime on WCPT is brokered, meaning that we have to pay for it in advance of our broadcast. We raised $147 since our last broadcast because of folks who bought tickets to our upcoming fundraiser at the Hideout, which is March 16th. So it's this upcoming Saturday. And it's going to be a very spicy conversation. So we have Dr. Amara Enya. We have Alderwoman-elect Maria Haddon. We have Ricardo Gamboa of the Houdoisie. And we have Stephanie Scora of the Girl I Guess voter guide. And we're all going to be spilling the tea about our feelings about what has been going on in Chicago politics. So you are not going to want to miss that. It's going to be a live show. So the audio will be recorded, and we'll have that on a later broadcast. I believe it's going to be March 31st. But we do want you to join us in person, so please purchase your tickets now via Brown Paper Tickets. We'll have Anna share that link also in the live stream. We definitely could use your help getting the word out, so please share that link on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, wherever. And you can also make an outright gift if you can't make it. We definitely need your help to keep our independent, female-led media on the air. So please consider making a donation via PayPal or Venmo if you just want to support the show, but you can't make it next Saturday. Thank you so much today to Ms. Lady B, our producer, who is in the other studio, and to Dennis. I saw him floating around. Thank you, Dennis, for being here. Thank you to Allie Marcella, who was on earlier in the broadcast. She's one of our production assistants. Thank you to Anna Katsenios, who is another one of our production assistants. This is a community project to keep this going. Thanks to our guests, Rosanna Rodriguez-Sanchez and Marianne Lalonde. I want to give a shout out to our supporters out in Aurora, Hillary and Mary Colby, who bought their tickets this week for the fundraiser. Thank you. Thank you to Jackrabbit for all of your amazing help. And thank you to all of those at home amplifying our show via social media. Thank you, everyone. And we will be back next week with Elizabeth Lindquist, and I hope to see you Saturday. And I think that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Shanna.
And we'll see you next week. Bye.